بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. يا ربنا زدنا علما وتقوى وبارك في أوقاتنا وفي أقوالنا وفي أفعالنا وتقبل منا ولا تأخذنا بذنوبنا وقصورنا. ونصلي ونسلم على الذي أرسلته بالهدى ودين الحق. أما بعد. So we continue inshallah with a discussion on the Salah itself, on those matters which allow us to benefit greatly from the Salah, from those matters which allow us to understand how the Salah connects us to Allah wa Ta'ala. And I believe that we can summarize what is going to be dealt with in the text and what has been addressed prior to in two statements, or in one statement in two words, better said. The matter comes back to discipline and knowledge. The discipline of the self and the reality of knowing exactly what it is that you're saying, how it is that you are approaching the Quran specifically, knowing what it is that you're reciting. And I mentioned also there's an issue of awareness, being aware that you're in the presence of Allah. That awareness has to be developed. And we should be careful not to get caught up in the whole process of formality. We should be careful not to get lost in the do's and the don'ts of the Salah. When everything is said and done, what counts is our awareness and consciousness of standing before Allah wa Ta'ala. It doesn't mean that actions shouldn't be performed in a certain way, those actions that are necessary for the Salah to be established. That doesn't mean that what we say in the Salah doesn't count. But what I'm saying is that we can have that form perfected of what it is that we do in the Salah, what it is that we say in the Salah. And then at the end, not be fully present and recognizing that we're standing before God. That's the end game here, people. The ulama, the scholars of Islam, they took these matters seriously, so they wrote about this type of topic in a disciplined way, and they looked at what's going on in the heart, they looked at what's going on in the mind, they looked at what could be better done in terms of the discipline that is put on the body, so to speak. How we should stand, how we should go into a bowing position, how we should prostrate, how we should sit, the formality part, where our eyes should be, how our minds should be oriented. I want to go back to the point of internal causes of distraction. And he says that the remedy for those things which are internal to us and they serve as a distraction is basically to deal with the causes. Why is it that there are certain things going on within us that distract us? Get to the root cause. And then he points to the point of forcing the self to focus on what is being read in prayer and occupy it with that, right? Occupy it with the prayer. And that's why I use the word discipline. Disciplining the self is taking the self in the concept of tarbiyah in Islam. That is an important word. It means to go from one point to another point to reach a goal, simply put. To guide that process, of step by step in order to reach a goal. And so in reality, that's how nature works. We develop step by step, and we reach different stages of development: physical development, emotional development, psychological development. In order to perfect that process, certain things have to be done. If we are developing without discipline, spiritual and physical discipline, we find that we're disoriented in many ways. We lack immaturity. And so we should think more about that concept of tarbiyah, guiding the self from one stage to another. And that really takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of investment. It takes effort. Right? One should prepare for that, the reality of the salah, before commencing the prayer itself. By finishing whatever you have to do and freeing yourself from responsibilities which you may have that may impinge, that may become an obstacle, that may interfere with the salah. It's important. He uses the word tafriq, which is basically to make space. That comes back down to time management. That comes back down to a lot of issues which could be summarized in organizing ourselves around this salah. And we mentioned that this fast-paced life, sometimes it puts us in a mode where it's difficult. And that's why I was saying that we have to add on to what he's to what he's telling us, so that we can account for the fact that we live in a time period which is disruptive. There's benefit in the time that we live in the age, in this historical moment, but at the same time, there's some obstacles. And so part of what I suggested was the issue of getting ourselves in that mode mentally and physically in that mode. And that's basically what he's saying. I want to relate a statement by Amir bin Abdul Qais, who was asked, do you fall into self-talk about some worldly matter while praying? So he replied, I would rather be struck with spearhead than notice myself doing that. Imam ibn Quddama says, know that eliminating the heart's love for this world is difficult, sa'b, and having it rarely removed completely. So do your best to remove what you can. Allah is the grantor of success and the provider of assistance. And so here, the idea is that we're conscious that we have to engage in disciplining ourselves. Part of being human is that these things occur. So the complete removal of any distraction, is almost impossible. Whether those distractions be external or internal to ourselves. That's why we mentioned the issue of accustoming ourselves to the moment of the salah, not from the angle of habit, but from the angle of accustoming ourselves to get in that state wherein we begin to tone down what's going on in our minds and we're celebrating the moment of encounter with God. Like that's important. The reality of hope is something that gives life to the prayer itself. Being between hope and fear. Hoping in Allah's mercy and fearing Allah's punishment. Hoping for good from Allah and fearing to lose that. Hoping to connect and fearing to be disconnected. Hoping to be rewarded in fear, of being punished for not standing before Allah properly. Hoping to encounter love. Right? Hoping to encounter love. And so I'm going to leave the part of knowledge for another session, the last session, because I want to go into detail and talk about the reality of Al-Fatiha, because he ended this section with a brief discussion on Al-Fatiha. And I wanted to devote just a live to that by itself. But I want to end this segment by saying there's times in life where we're more distracted than others. There's situations which are more intense than others. So it's important to acknowledge that reality. It's important to be easy with ourselves. It's important to be disciplined as well. It's important to be in touch with the rhythms of life. Ups and downs, hardship and ease. Sometimes we're energetic, sometimes we're tired, like that. And so, with all said and done, that awareness that we're in the presence of God is the most important thing that we can work on. And with that, we end. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.